Today we're going to be talking about the regions of North Carolina. North Carolina is broken up into 4 regions. Well, there's an argument about that. Some people say it's actually 3 regions and 1 subregion, with the Tidewater being the subregion. But the textbook and what we'll talk about this year divided up into 4 regions. You have the Tidewater over here, which is close to the Atlantic Ocean. Then a little bit inland, you have the coastal plain. In the middle of the state, you have the Piedmont. And then in the far west of the state, you have the mountain region. The Tidewater region, of course, has your beaches and your lighthouses and sounds and estuaries. So the geographical features include the ocean, which to our east is the Atlantic Ocean. There are sounds, which are inland bodies of mixed salt and fresh water. The beach, barrier islands, which is a long chain of sand spits, the most famous of which are the Outer Banks. They have inlets in the Tidewater. Inlets are the gap in the barrier islands that allow seawater to flow in and out with the tides. The Tidewater's main industry are fishing and tourism. So lots of people go to the beach, so they spend money on hotels and food and so forth, and then obviously fishing. The fishermen go out and do fresh catches of seafood to sell at market. Wilmington is North Carolina's largest port. It has been one of North Carolina's largest cities through most of history and provides a direct outlet to the sea. Wilmington is one of the only cities in the Tidewater that actually provides a good outlet to the sea where a ship can move in and out. The Gulf Stream is an ocean current. It runs along the North Carolina coast and carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico. This warm water from the Gulf Stream collides with cold water from the north, which causes storms off the coast of Cape Hatteras. Throughout history, these storms have caused thousands of ships to sink off of North Carolina coast, thus giving this name off of our coast the graveyard of the Atlantic. So if we move a little bit west, we come into the coastal plain. So the coastal plain is a large farming region, and its geographical features include rich soil, rivers, flat land, and forest. The flatness and rich soil are the most distinguishing characteristics of the coastal plain region. And even though the coastal plain is home to the richest soil in the state, it also has a small area called the Sandhills, which has the poorest soil in the state. It's just very sandy, and not a lot of things grow there, except the Sandhills actually do produce a good peach crop. The Sandhills lie in the southwest portion of the region, close to Fayetteville and on towards Sanford, Southern Pines, going into the Piedmont. The main industry of the coastal plain is farming. For a long time, the farming industry was dependent upon tobacco, but stricter tobacco laws caused a lot of farmers to stop farming tobacco. Another cash crop of the coastal plain is cotton, and then there's corn, and a lot of the farmers in the coastal plain are livestock farmers, hogs and chickens. Rocky Mount, Greenville, Wilson, and Goldsboro provided outlets for the largest tobacco growing region in the world when tobacco was the heavily grown crop of the coastal plain. Crossroad hamlets are small towns that usually have a store or two, a school, a church, and are generally named for local residents. A lot of the crossroads hamlets of North Carolina have eventually evolved into larger towns. Johnston County has a crossroad hamlet not too far from us. McGee's Crossroads would be one of these crossroads hamlets, and it's actually grown a lot over the last several years and has much more than a store or two, but that's an example of a crossroads hamlet. So now we'll keep traveling and get into the Piedmont. Of course, the Piedmont is home to the capital city of Raleigh, as well as several other large cities. The Piedmont is home to the largest cities in North Carolina, including Charlotte, Winston-Salem, and as I mentioned, Raleigh. Some of the geographical features of the Piedmont are the rolling hills, red clay, forests, and rivers. The most unforgettable feature of the Piedmont is the red clay. So if you've ever been outside and gotten into that red clay mud, it's very sticky and gooey and hard to clean off, and it stains your clothes and everything. So the cool thing about Clayton is part of Clayton is actually in the coastal plain and part of Clayton is actually in the Piedmont. And you can tell that as you drive through Clayton. If you're coming from the east, coming from closer to Archer's Lodge or Smithfield, and you start driving through, as you get closer towards Garner, going through Clayton, you'll notice you'll start going up and down more hills, and you'll see a lot more red clay. So that means you're kind of getting out of the coastal plain and going into the Piedmont. So the Piedmont and coastal plain are divided by an imaginary line called the fall line. And this line is what divides North Carolina into the east and west sections. Industry in the Piedmont has shifted over time. Principal industries used to be tobacco, textiles, and furniture. At one point, High Point, North Carolina, in the Piedmont region, was the furniture capital of the world. Used to produce the most furniture in the world. But over time, the industry of the Piedmont has shifted to banking, technology, and pharmaceuticals. The Triangle, which is the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, is rapidly growing. It's more commonly called RTP, and there's lots of industries and businesses that have moved in to the RTP area, like IBM, and there's even talk of Apple opening a small headquarters in this region. Garner is getting its name on the map, which isn't too far from Raleigh and not too far from Clayton. Amazon is going to come and bring in a distribution center. So RTP appears to be growing. And the last region of our great state is the mountain region. The mountain region's geographical features are obviously mountains. It also has rocky soil, forests, rivers, and streams. Balds are places near the top of the mountains where few trees grow. In the mountain region, the industry is mainly Christmas trees and tourism. So lots of people go to the mountains for tourism. They go in the fall to see the leaves changing colors. Then a lot of people go back at Christmas time to see the Biltmore House decorated in its Christmas trees and decorations and so forth. The Continental Divide runs along the Blue Ridge Mountains. Streams on the eastern side of the Continental Divide flow down to the Atlantic Ocean, and streams on the western side send water to tributaries of the Mississippi River. The mountains of North Carolina belong to the Appalachian mountain chain and include the Great Smoky Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains. The Great Smokies get their name from the dew of the spruce and fir trees, which look like smoke as it rises. So that concludes our presentation of North Carolina's regions. So we've just traveled from Murphy to Manteo, which is actually a pretty famous saying in North Carolina. Murphy is the furthest city west in the mountain regions, and Manteo is the furthest city east without getting on the Outer Banks.